All right, I'm excited about this question. Let me read it to you and then talk about it a little bit. Phil, how do you break out of a rut? I started entering one with my old career in late 2019, parentheses, which might have been the worst possible timing to enter a rut. You are correct on that, which was later compounded with a worldwide pandemic and a multitude of social justice issues. I feel like I'm fighting multiple battles, and each one feels like the enemy looks uh, completely different. I'm so very tired of fighting, and I bet you are, and I bet that the people that are watching or listening to this podcast would totally, I mean, we probably, a bunch of us bear witness to that statement. All right, well, let's talk about this. Let's focus first on the idea of like, how do we get out of a rut, or can we get out of a rut? And I believe the answer is yes. And in fact, let me just say this: that I think Christian or non-Christian alike, we tend to feel the same way about the rut. We might draw an ultimate different conclusion, but I think our process is very similar. So some of what I'm going to say you can find in any psychology or life coach or business kind of model for moving away from ruts. It works in the world, and it works among Christians in the same way. So let me start with the first one. And as I said, I think most everybody acknowledges this to be true. The fact that you're able to acknowledge that you're in a rut is probably it's the very beginning of a good direction for you. Acknowledging that you're in a rut. Now, it doesn't fix the problem, but it certainly, the worst thing about being stuck in a rut is not knowing that you're stuck in a rut. And so I commend you for at least knowing that you're in that. But again, you hear that and you say, well, that's great, but nothing's changed. And, let's also acknowledge something else that maybe, we're all going to see to be true. COVID, man, this pandemic, that was 2 years, 2 solid years of absolute crisis on multiple levels, no matter what, whether you got sick, whether you got it, whether you didn't, doesn't matter. Our business life, our social life, our emotional, spiritual, physical life, everything was put on kind of a weird pause. And that affected all of us in really deep and meaningful ways that I think we're going to spend a long time discovering. As well, you also acknowledged that in the same time, we had an upheaval of social justice issues. And just by saying that, it tells me those things mattered to you. And so you just begin to, I think a part of what feels like a rut is when we all feel helpless. We feel like we're, when I think of a rut, this might be a really stupid example, but I always think of just the gutters of a bowling alley. Told you it was going to be stupid, but where a rut, those gutters, the ball gets in there and it just can't get out. It doesn't have the momentum to move out of that. And that's a good analogy that I think I want to express to you. It's easy to see that the ball's in the gutter, but how do we get that out of the gutter? How do we get our lives out of a rut? We need to also identify the cause of that rut. What was it that got you there? Is it relationship? Is it the job that you have? Is it your mindset? Is it your mentality? What is it? It's okay to kind of, relook at your life and look towards identifying those causes of what brought you to that. If you feel helpless because of social justice issues, then ask yourself this: is there something that I'm supposed to be doing? How could I be a part of a solution? Am I willing to change the trajectory, right? To get enough momentum to get out of the gutter do I want that enough? So ask yourself that question, can I identify the cause? Let me also suggest this. Are you willing to identify or maybe take a closer look at your own goals in life? What's motivating you? If you were hurt by, again, I'm using your example, the pandemic did a lot of damage, being stuck in a rut at your job, feeling helpless because of social injustice around us. Okay, what are your goals? And your stated goals and those goals that are implicit to your own heart are probably different. Here's what I mean. You might have a stated goal of, I want to, be able to buy a home by this time, or I want to be able to, I want to go on these vacations, or I want to see this happen in my life. That's great. But implicitly, you might have other goals like, I am tired of living in a world that continues to have social injustice, right? And because it's not a stated goal, it's just an implied goal in your own heart. Now you're frustrated because you feel like nothing's happening. And I hope we all know this. We're not going to change the world, but we might change our world, just the little things around us. So take a closer look at your own goals. Let me also suggest this. Start small. Make small changes. If you feel trapped, the answer is not quit everything, change everything, become a new person. It just starts small. And I think even, let me read this verse to you. Put my glasses on because I'm using it. I'm using this one. I'm using this one here. Okay. Let me read to you from Romans 12, where Paul says, I beseech you, brethren, by the mercies of God, present your bodies. This is verses 1 and 2. Present your bodies a living sacrifice, wholly acceptable to God, which is your reasonable service. And here's the part I want you to get. Do not be conformed to this world. That's not it. You ready? But be transformed by the renewing of your mind, that you may prove what is that good and acceptable and perfect will of God. Be transformed by the renewing of your mind. Suggestion. That's not a total, everything needs to change in 1 second. That's make small changes. Allow yourself to think differently, to live differently. Listen, if you feel like you're in a rut, change it up. Let me even suggest this, and this is, I think in the church and in the world, we're going to say the same thing. Create a little bit of spontaneity in your life. Change your routine, change your rhythm a little bit. If you feel stuck, let's change that a little bit. Is this going to fix everything? Maybe not right away, but little changes over time have a huge impact. The problem is we see the rut, we see the issue, and we try to go for drastic change immediately, but we can't sustain it. We haven't built that into our lives already. So start small and know it's okay. Let me mention one other thing here. And the Bible is so clear on this thing. Give yourself a little bit of grace. Give yourself a little bit of grace. We always talk about being gracious to others, but God's gracious to us. And so as you're, give yourself the grace that, man, it's been a difficult season. Now let's not get stuck in that, but let's also just acknowledge that it's been a hard time. You're allowed to feel that way. You're allowed to be in that. And you know what? The Lord can bring you out of that. I mentioned that already. Let me see here. Yeah, one final thought that I want to mention. Perfect can be the enemy of good. Okay, we're not in heaven yet where things are perfect. Let's just start for good. It's okay to I want to be here and I want this and I want that, and it's not happening, and to feel like you've let yourself down and let everybody around you down. Let's give ourselves a little bit of grace and let's go for good, not for perfect. Give yourself a little bit of space to just be like, I'm going to make a little change towards good. Maybe it's a health change. Maybe it's a mindset change. I'm going to be more optimistic in my workplace, or I'm going to work over the next year towards changing my job, whatever it might be. I see social injustice and I want to see that change. Okay, well, how are you working towards that? Maybe you don't, quit your job and become a social media activist, but maybe it's how the conversations that you have, what you tolerate, what you do not tolerate, whatever it might be. Transforming the mind. Let's work towards that.
Thank you so much for joining us, whether online or in person. We pray that the ministry of Calvary San Diego is encouraging you in your faith. If you would like to follow along with what we are doing or hear more teachings, you can do so by downloading the Calvary SD mobile or TV app. Also, if you would like to partner with us and worship through giving, you can do so at calvarysd.com/give. Thanks for tuning in.